Hello and welcome to Frankly Speaking with Frank Portinari, the podcast that gains access to real and inspiring people. So let's dig, let's delve and let's discover. Let's inquire, let's explore and let's experience the fascinating life of today's guest, Johnny Kinch. Johnny, welcome to Frankly Speaking.
Cheers, Frank. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. I just want to start off by making a few announcements. I'd like to thank all those who viewed, liked, made comments and have subscribed to the first podcast. It's very much appreciated. I'd like to thank today's sponsors, Myson's Building Company, a company built on good family principles and values. And I'd also like to thank Raw Media Solutions for all their technical advice and support. And one other person I'd like to thank, Mark Kersey from North London, who was the lucky recipient of our mug for being the 100th subscriber. So without further ado, Mark, it's over to you, question time. What I'd like you to do, Mark, I beg your pardon, Johnny, I'm still thinking about the mug. Yes, Johnny, what I'd like to do is if you could give us...
I am the mug.
As to where... I apologise. Johnny, where did life begin for you? Where was you brought up? Where did your childhood take place?
I grew up in a little village in Leicestershire called Woodhouse Eaves, almost 50 years ago, next month, which I'm delighted about. Well, I'm delighted that my wife's 13 years younger than me, so that, I guess, back of the net for that one. But yeah, I grew up in a tiny little village. We were all a load of mods, and like tinkering around with scooters and stuff like that. And I guess I was always a bit of the odd one of the bunch, really, because I was misdiagnosed with, at the time, nobody really knew about ADHD and OCD and stuff like that. Right. So later on in life, I'd get diagnosed with that. But so I was just a naughty boy, and my dad. It's a crazy story with my dad. Living in that little village, it's an idyllic little village. My dad was a professional boxer. And actually his sparring partner was Tony Sibson, who went on to fight Marvin Hagler for the World Championship.
All right.
Yeah. And so they were both from Belgrade Boxing Club. So I had an interest in boxing as a young lad. And my dad did as well, but unfortunately it was in my face. So, I grew up, psychologically, physically, abused by my old man. And so it was not a happy childhood. It was one of fear, anger, didn't understand why, all these things were in. So I did eventually go back to the village, and I've got a lot of friends there and stuff. But I guess it led me to go and try and find some kind of pleasure in life, because I later found out that when you're a kid, if you're not brought up in the right environment, your brain doesn't form properly. And so you've not got those models, you haven't got the correct kind of chemical balance in your brain, and where you would normally have a happy environment and childhood, as my kids do, I sought out pleasure, which is a completely different thing, which is a dopamine hit. So I was always, and you can find it in anything. You can find it in setting things on fire. You can find it in having a fight with somebody at school. You can find it with whatever. So kind of led to an addictive personality where I was always searching for pleasure, which I misinterpreted. You know what I mean? And so, we left the village when I was 7, but my dad had and the reason why we left, my dad had a crazy Christian conversion. He was working on the door of a nightclub in Loughborough called Adam and Eve, funny enough, and then he got converted to Christianity, right? And at the Adam and Eve, which is a little bit odd. And so he went full steam ahead into it, and as a family, he took us off to Birmingham, to Edgbaston, where my dad did a degree. We were there for 3 years, and he did a degree in theology, and so that led to, this was the beginning then of all of the abuse which kept on going on, and but also a very, very unsettled childhood because we moved so many times.
Right. So despite the Christian conversion, he still continued to physically abuse you then? Or did he repent?
Yeah, he did.
Was there any stage he kind of looked back on what he was doing? Did by finding God, did that help him in any way to look back and sort of evaluate what he'd been doing to you and consider stop doing that?
No, it's the most bizarre. There's something wrong with the bloke. I mean, I don't have anything to do with him now, but no, it didn't actually. He carried on doing the same stuff, but now he'd got a just cause to do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it always kind of baffled me as a kid when he would, he'd get this extra thick belt out, you know what I mean, and crack the belt, you know what I mean, come here, you know what I mean, and all this kind of thing, and then my mum would always be going like, "You wait till your father gets home," and so it became the anticipation of the pain became worse than the pain itself. Things that happened to me. So it went on, him putting me over his knee, with a bare arse and like whacking me with belts and sticks and his hand and stuff like that. To crazy enough, there were times when he'd roll his own trouser leg up and smack his own leg and say, "I'm doing this because I love you," right? Right. And so, and then and also every time he did, kind of either hit me or do something horrible to me, it would be followed by, "I'm doing this because I love you," and so equating those two things together, love and violence, you know what I mean? Yeah. Didn't make for a good mixture in a young teen, when I eventually left home. And I left home under difficult circumstances anyway, because I've got two brothers, and I was all, my mum. Strangely, it wasn't violent to my brothers, and I don't know what it was in me. Maybe he saw too much of himself in me. Maybe I have no idea. I've racked my brain about it, but he wasn't really violent to them. But it came to a head really at that particular point when he had a knife at my mum in the front room, and we were all upstairs, me and my brothers, and mum was screaming and all that kind of thing. And I was 15 years old, and I just remember thinking, I ain't letting this go on. So I ran downstairs and jumped on his back, put my arms around his neck, and then so that took his attention off my mum, and then he was trying to wrestle me off, and eventually, threw me off, and I then ran for the front door, and weirdly, then my mum started helping him get me. Right. And like I can remember reaching for the door and like, turning the knob like that. And I had hair then, and like, and lots of it. Didn't we all? Yeah, you know what I mean? And it's been a long time since we've had an edge wire in our face, isn't it? But I remember my dad and my mum grabbing my hair, and the force of me wanting to leave and them trying to pull my hair just literally ripped big chunks of my hair out. And anyway, I got out of the house, ran off down the road, went to this pub called the Bull's Head, and hid behind a wall. And you bear in mind, we're in a little village, and there was an army barracks just down the road, and I waited behind this wall, and I thought, when dare I pop my head up? What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? I was 15 years old. What do I know? So, but I knew I weren't going back. Simple as that. So eventually I jumped up over the wall. I started, walking off down towards the army barracks, which was the main road out. And my dad comes bezzing down the road in his car, up onto the curb, trying to mow me down. I'm running in and out the trees, and he's literally trying to mow me down. I run down this really long drive to where the guard was at the army barracks, and I said to him, I made out I didn't know who he was. I went, this mad bloke is trying to run me over, and we're talking, I'm talking 35 years ago. So it was different then, and I can remember my dad was driving a Ford Green Opel Cadet. And
I remember him vaguely.
So my dad, horrible car. And so my dad starts walking down this drive towards me and the guard. And as he gets close enough, I just saw my opportunity, and I pushed the guard into my dad. And of course, I'm 15. I was like, whip it up this road, up this drive, out into the middle of the road. No lie, standing there with my arms out in the middle of the road. A car is coming at me. It was a brown Ford Granada, right? And it stopped in front of me, and it was an old bloke in it. And he just let me get in. I jumped in, and he says, "Where do you want to go?" And I says, "Anywhere. Can we lose that car behind?" Because by this time my dad had got in his car and he was following us. Now the Opel Cadet was no match for a big Granada. So the bloke put his foot down, and the area is called Charnwood, and you go through all these trees and wood and stuff like that. And he put his foot down, and we lost my dad. And he dropped me off in this little town called Colville, which I'd never been to. And then he gave me a bunch of cigarettes and wished me luck. And so I'm off walking down the road, and it's getting dark. I've got no mobile phones, nothing like obviously nothing like that. I had no money, not a penny, no money for a pay box or anything like that to call the girlfriend I was seeing at the time. And but I goes past seen this farmhouse and like this shed with the light on. And so I made my way down this track, and I popped my head in this shed, and there's this woman in the shed, big, massive shed it was. And she says, what are you doing? Can I help you? And I told her the story. And weirdly, she turns out that she worked for the Samaritans. And she said, "Listen, I'm going to help you out. Come into the house, make a phone call. Her husband was there, whatever." I organised to go over to the girlfriend's house at the time, and her husband drove me over there and dropped me off. And I basically stayed there on their floor for a little while until I got myself a flat in Loughborough. And that was kind of how I left home. And but it wouldn't be the last time I'd have a run-in with my dad. And it went on for years.
So what about your schooling, Nick? Johnny? What happened?
And it's sad. It's just about my what?
I'm saying, what about your schooling then? I mean, how did this impact upon your education? At that point, were you still at school, or had you left school?
Yeah, no, I was still at school. You don't leave till 16. And but I pretty much left. I was the last year of O levels, and so I didn't attend any of my exams, and I was pretty much bunking off anyway, most of the time. And so school education, I didn't get an education or anything like that. However, I was very good at drama, as it happened, and I was always interested in drama. And, part of, I guess, my dad's craziness was when he was preaching at the churches, if he wanted a bit of drama doing to act out some kind of thing to do with his sermon, I'd be the one that would have to do it. And so, I don't know whether that's where I got my kind of love of drama from. I think it was being ADHD and just the energy and kind of like a bit of showing off, really. As a kid, you do, and you don't realize you're doing it. And, so I always loved drama. So when I was at school, I excelled in drama. And basically, I can remember it was the Haymarket Theatre. They came round to the school and they were looking for the best of the talent there to have them come and be in Guys and Dolls, in a professional production. And they picked me out of the whole school. And but my dad wouldn't let me do it because the rehearsals were on a Sunday. And of course, he was church man, Mr. Churchman now, while he was still having affairs, while he was still, doing all this whilst hiding behind the pulpit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now we know now, and whiter than white, and these and thous and all that kind of stuff, and then beating your kids and doing all that kind of stuff. It's shocking. What the older generation got away with. Well, not everybody, obviously, because there was a lot of really good people. But I just wish I'd have had people get positions in life that they do not deserve, or they certainly haven't got the minerals and the integrity to be able to really fulfill that duty. And sadly, people look up to these people, and they look to them for solace, and they look to them for encouragement and advice and stuff like that. And somebody in that position can be good at giving that advice, and they can be a two-faced person, or and hide their real true identity, and have these demons hiding in the closet, and go home and rule with an iron fist and rape your wife and do all the things that my dad did, and then he is like, everyone else thinks like, butter would melt in his mouth, you know what I mean? And he was not a little bloke either. I mean, have you heard of Billy Graham?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Famous.
Yeah, Billy Graham. I mean, my dad, he was, I guess there's a bit of drama in him in terms of, they have in the Christian circles what they call your testimony. Now, we all have a testimony. It's our life story, you know what I mean? But, in the church, that it's your conversion testimony. That's what they want to talk about. And of course, they put emphasis on the greater, the more terrible things you've done in your life, and now you've changed. You know what I mean? The greater your conversion, and that's a load of crap. Because at the end of the day, it's if it doesn't transfer into actual practical living, and that people can see and touch and feel, you know what I mean? Then believing something don't mean diddly squat. But he was a good talker, and and he had this dramatic conversion, if you like, because obviously he was a professional boxer. He was a doorman. He got converted at this place called the Adam and Eve, and for a little while, I guess he did change. But I was too young to notice. You know what I mean? And maybe for a couple of months he did change. Maybe he was happy and found this new God, in a sense. And anyway, Billy Graham was coming over to the UK for what they called crusades back then, and they were going around all the football. This will have you interested. They were going around all the football stadiums, and like they were sold out. But what he'd done was Billy Graham had written to all the churches in the country, and he had asked them to send their testimony in on a cassette, and for any younger people listening, a cassette is what you used to put in a cassette player, and actually sounds would come from it.
I'm glad you explained that.
Yeah, you did. You didn't download it from the cloud. You know what I mean? So anyway, my dad sent off his cassette. Billy Graham wrote back, and my dad got picked out of everybody. Right now, so the chances are,
Yeah.
I mean, anyway. So as a family, we were invited to go to Aston Villa Football Club, and they had 45,000 people there in attendance, and
Wow.
Billy Graham was speaking, and they had a choir on, everything like that. And my dad, my mum, me, and my brothers were all on the stage with Billy Graham. Billy Graham would speak, and then he introduced my dad. Then my dad spoke and gave his testimony. Now, all whilst what was going on was going on.
Yeah.
And anyway, yeah, I mean, that's just another, he's had his own crazy life, but we'll get, I guess we'll get to that when we get to later on in the story of my life, when I got kids myself, and now I decided, things were going to stop and change. And for the first time in our family, there wasn't going to be an onset of violence. We're going to be brought up in the right way, and we're going to do everything the right way. So, but yeah, I left home like at that time, and then I slept rough for a while. My first job was at McDonald's, and actually, it was relatively new in the UK then, and I got sacked from there. Got sacked from McDonald's. How crap you got to be to get sacked from McDonald's? And no disrespect for anyone who works at McDonald's.
The viewers might want to know.
No, I got sacked. I got sacked for something really stupid. It was just that it was I'd gone to a party the night before, and it was some miles away from Loughborough town centre, and so I got one of my mates to ring up and say, "Oh, Johnny's sick. You know what I mean? I'm his dad. Blah blah blah. All this kind of thing. He can't come in." And so they swallowed it. It was fine. But my little brother didn't know. And at the time, I was, like I say, I must have been just around 15, something like that. Then it's not long before I left home. I ran away from home. But my little brother went in and said I just come to see my brother, Johnny. They went, "Oh, isn't he not at home ill?" He went, "No, he went to a party last night." And so that was it. I got called in, and the worst thing about it was the bloke said to me, "It's a shame that you got to go because you're a McDonald's type of guy," and no, that was the worst thing, being called a McDonald's type of guy.
Yeah, I mean, that could have left you with a chip on your shoulder, couldn't it?
Yeah, it could.
Sorry,
yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, I had a real beef with it.
All right, okay. We'll call that one all in, shall we?
Yeah. So
when did the acting side of things come? Did that come before you had thoughts of joining the army, or?
Well, I mean, obviously, like I say, I'd had a taste of it at school. And I was good at it, and I got recognised for being good at it, and it came kind of naturally to me. And but I couldn't. I guess it didn't expand just because of my father. And so then, at that age, then you didn't have nobody advising you. I didn't have no one to go to and say, well, what am I going to do with my life or anything like that, And my granddad had been a sergeant major in the Royal Marines. In the Second World War. My cousin was a corporal in the Royal Marines, and so we'd got a family history of being in the Corps. And so I just thought to myself, I'd had a string of like crappy jobs, and gone from flat to flat, and I was terrible. I never paid a bill. I never, I was always fighting. And I didn't mind a brawl. I had got literally, like you said though, but for seriously, I got a chip on my shoulder. I thought the world owed me a favour. I was always one of those people that, why me? Why has it got to happen to me? Why, why has this happened to me? I mean, and all the time, never. And I look back now, and I think, what a waste! What a waste! of my life. What a waste! If I'd have only have had, a guiding hand. You know what I mean?
Some kind of mentor,
yeah. And you know what? I know a lot of hard men and stuff like that, and I've done my own stupid things. But at the end of the day, the best man you can be is if you're a father, is to be a good father, and that takes real guts, that takes real sacrifice. You know what I mean? That takes that to me is something that I am, sad that I'm never going to experience. And that when my father passes, I will only mourn the fact that I never had the opportunity to have a father.
Yeah.
And, but I can be a father. But anyway, I had, me and a mate had gone paintballing. This is how it started. Me and a mate had gone paintballing, and I was loving it. I was rubbing mud on my face and all that. I was in stealth mode, you know what I mean? And I was in and out, they could not find me. I was creeping, and I could creep up on somebody, you know what I mean, and shoot them. And I just thought I was the bee's knees at it. And one of my mates who I went with, his dad owned a pub, and their family tradition was the RAF. And actually his dad flew a plane, or his uncle flew a plane. And he had his own plane in the village as well. And he flew, he used to see him flying the loops and all that, over the village. And so we said, I tell you what, let's go down to the careers office, you know what I mean? And let's go and sign up. And so I said, what do we want to do? I says, well, we want to do the best, we want to go in the Marines, that's the hardest. And that, there might be some people that will argue with that, but at the end of the day,
I'm not allowed to talk about my days in the Scouts.
The
Official Secrets Act. I'm not allowed to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, mine wasn't as anywhere near as dramatic as yours. So, but yeah, we went down the careers office. We signed up, and then eventually. Now, I had psoriasis as a kid. I was covered in it, and I was always covered in cream and stuff like that. Never would let a girl see me in shorts or a t-shirt, because I had it all over my arms and everywhere, and all in my hair and all that. And but by this time, I was it was getting better, and my mate had gone for his medical first, and he had got eczema. And they turned him down because he got eczema. Right. And he told me, so I was like, crap, what am I going to do? So I went down to my doctor, and the doctor's back in that day, his name was Dr. Ackers. And I'm sure he's not around anymore. He was an old boy then, but I told him what the score was. I said, look, I've got a medical for the Marines, and they're going to want they want all the records. Yeah. And my mate, so he went, don't you worry about it, son. Don't you worry about it. And that was it. I passed the medical. I went there and they checked me, and I didn't, at the time, I didn't have an outbreak. And on my medical records, it said nothing, because he had doctored them. And so that was it. I was then officially invited down to Lympstone to go and do what's called a PRC, which is a potential recruits course. So it's a 3-day course where you go down there and you get a taste, a flavour of, what's expected of you. You get to see what's going on. You get to go and have your scran with people who are actually already in training, and it's also an opportunity for them to see you and how dedicated you are. And you can get what's called me, I was always obsessive. I didn't know I'd got OCD, but I was always obsessive. If someone had to be first, I had to be first. You know what I mean? If whatever it was. And it took a lot of dedication and effort as well. So I went on this PRC course, but I trained like mad before I went just on a 3-day course. I took it like it was like my life. And every time you had to do something, the first person had to shout out their last name, and it was always Kinch. You know what I mean? And okay, Kinch, and it was that. So at the end of the 3 days, I got a distinction. I got me and one other lad out of all of the lads got called into the office, and we were told we've got a distinction pass, which was highly looked upon, which meant you were a very good potential recruit. And so I got then a start date, and that was in 1990. And so I went down there, and I can remember getting the train, and you have to turn up wearing a shirt and tie and a suit and clean shaven and all that kind of thing. And then it all started. We got in there. My troop number was 600. My number's P050080 Golf. You never forget it. And and then I met some great lads, and I was going through training. It was hard. It was tough. But I was a tough lad. But I didn't know, it was going to end in, quite a serious injury for me. And towards the end of the course, I was having real difficulties. I'd already had shin splints, and I'd had a stress fracture. So in between, any kind of physical exercise, I was hobbling around on crutches. The physio and all that kind of stuff was kind of archaic back then, you know what I mean? And and they'd make you run, they wouldn't believe it. Felt like, I don't know whether they did or they didn't, but it felt like they didn't believe you when you told them, listen, I can't move my feet. My legs will move, but I can't actually tread on my feet, because I eventually got what's called compartment syndrome, and I got it on both legs. So it's called bilateral lower compartment syndrome, and it's like, imagine when you go to the shop and you buy a big bit of ham or something like that. Now, if that ham is pumped full of liquid, it's going to expand, and in that bag, it's going to find the weakest part of that bag to pop out. And that's what happens with my legs. So I've got holes all down my legs, where my muscles popped out in all of these areas. And it meant that, eventually I got pulled out of training, and then I had to go back a troop. And then eventually it got to the point where I got put in a kind of like, a sick troop. And I stayed in there basically until I got a discharge. It's called Hunter Troop, the troop that you go in when you've got physical problems and stuff like that. And to me, it was just a nightmare. My world was shattered. It was ended. I mean, that was the year, because I can remember, I was probably halfway through training, and we got called into a room, sat down, and then we were told, right, lads, the Gulf War started. And it literally started then, first Gulf War. I think I was in 91. And they said, you're all on standby. You know what I mean? Of course, everyone was on standby, and they weren't going to send us in, first, obviously. And normally they send the Marines in. They how they do it monetary wise as well, because 32 weeks of training costs a lot of money.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Per each soldier, and so and then you've got somebody in the army who's doing 8 weeks training, and so how much does that cost? And that's how they look at it, which is terribly sad, but it is. You send in these guys and whatever, and if the crap hits the fan, right, we send the Marines in, we send the paras in, you know what I mean, and whatever, to, or unless it's specialist jobs and stuff like that. So they had offered me an operation at the Royal Navy Hospital, but they said, look, you're going to they said I would go out to Civvy Street, get your operation done, if that's the way you want to go. And then you are welcome to reapply and come back, and you will instantly get in if you are fit enough and healthy enough and whatever. And then you can, basically carry on. And so once I'd got out into Civvy Street and went to see the hospital, they said, listen, there's a 50-50 chance of anything working. And what they do is for compartment syndrome, they have this instrument that's very, very long, and it's got like a little V scissor at the end, and they put an incision just under the right side of your kneecap and under your skin, and then they slice all the way down the muscle to open the muscle up, and then pull it back out again. And they do that on both legs, so that hopefully your muscle will regrow back together a bit bigger. And but I've seen pictures of people who have had it done, and it's a horrific.
How old were you
operation,
point, Johnny? How old were you at this point?
20 years old.
Okay.
20 years old. So I came out, and I was like, I ain't having that operation. There's no way I'm having that operation. It's just, there's no guarantees. There's nothing, and I don't want to be in a wheelchair because, so, and of course, walking normally and stuff like that, I was fine. I was still 20 years old. I wasn't having to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go on, 6-mile runs or do 13-mile runs or do whatever, or carry heavy stuff and do long runs and whatever. So I was fine. So I decided I was going to hitchhike it through Europe. And I got 60 quid. I went down to Irish menswear, which was like a ex-military, shop, sold
like
all
the stuff,
army surplus and all that. And so bought myself a German army para sleeping bag, one with sleeves and a hood, and it had a zip across the knees so you could get your legs out quick. And so I bought myself one of them and a little rucksack. Somebody gave me a coach ticket down to London from Leicester, and off I went with 60 quid. And I didn't know where. I just said, I'm going to Spain. That was it. And so I jumped on the coach, got dropped off in and can't remember where it was, but central London anyway, because it was the first time I'd been there.
Probably Victoria, I imagine.
Yeah. And then I made my way on a train down to Dover, and I literally stood for about 45 minutes, that was it, at the port of Dover, where the lorries were going to get on the ferries. And the bloke went, where you going, mate? I went, well, across there. You know what I mean? And he went, jump in. So I jumped in. Oh, wow. And we went onto the ferry, and it was an overnight one. And so he paid for my food, and there was a spare bunk. There was no, he was just a straight, normal bloke. And, he was just really a nice guy, and I guess probably wanted a bit of company, you know what I mean? So and doing me a favour. And this was at a weekend. So when we got across to Zeebrugge, there's no lorries allowed to drive at the weekend on the continent. I don't know whether that's still true now. It certainly was then. And so you couldn't hitchhike with a lorry then over the weekend. No. So I was just off walking down, heading towards Brussels, and that's all I had. I had a map, paper map, and heading towards Brussels. No mobile phones, none of all this funny business. Nobody bothering you, no one contacting you. You know what I mean? You eat what you could find, and didn't speak any of the lingo. And I can remember. I always had my thumb out, and cars would go by, and some old lady, out of all the people, some old lady, little tiny old lady, picked me up in this tiny little car, and she said she just went Ghent, and I was like, yeah, all right. And so I jumped in this car, and I had no idea where we were going or anything, and we were trying to communicate and the best we could. communicating with smiles, really, and all that kind of thing. And she dropped me off in a town called Ghent.
Yeah, I know.
And so I then went from there, eventually made my way to Brussels, and then I caught a train which took me to Paris, and then from Paris down to Toulouse, and then from Toulouse to a place called Cibrère. Now, Cibrère is the last. It's a beautiful little, from what I remember, I'd love to go back there. It's a beautiful little town, and it's the last town on the border with Spain, at the bottom of France. Yeah. And so I slept in my supposedly, mosquito-proof sleeping bag overnight, and I woke up in the morning on the beach completely bitten to pieces. Do you know what I mean? And anyway, I had to walk up this mountain, and the next day, and it was just round and round and round and round. And I got to the top, and that was the first time I showed my passport from leaving the UK.
Right.
And that was going into Spain. So I got into France, I got out of the UK, into France, and I got in. Now I was just about to go into Spain, and it was right at the very top of this mountain. There was there was a border patrol, and I showed my passport, and they gave me a few bottles of water, and then I went off down the road into Spain, and I was it must have been about 200 meters away from the border patrol, and they couldn't see me, and there was just happened to be literally a little moped that running just there. By the side, it was obviously belonged to someone, right? But it was just there, and I was like, I can't. What am I gonna? I can't, And so anyway, I jumped on this moped, and I was off, and that was it. And I went down to the next town, which was called Portbou, Port Boo, or whatever "boo" means in Spanish. Anyway, mate, I'm not sure, actually. I know a little bit of Spanish because I learned it while I was over there. But I got just enough money to get a train to Barcelona, right? So basically gave all my money over and got on this overnight sleeper. It was like 2 or 3 days, I think. And there were other people, travelers as well, you know what I mean, and all that, and give you a bit of food and whatever. And got to Barcelona. I had some very strange experiences in Barcelona. I swear on my life that 2 blokes tried to trap me in a hotel, and basically I don't know what they were going to do with me. I can only imagine. But I came out. I remember coming out of the metro. And it was right on to a place called La Ramblas, right, which is a big, mile-long cobbled kind of street that takes you right down to the port, the harbour there, where they've got in fact, a couple of the ships are Armada ships, and along it is all like bars, and at the top end is the red light district where I'd come out, and unfortunately, and they must have been looking for tourists, because some bloke comes over and goes, "Are you all right, mate? You lost?" And he perfect English, like just normal, regular guy, and he was an English guy. I said, "So yeah," "I've just got here, mate. I'm just trying to find my way around and everything." He goes, "Oh well, come to the hotel, and have something to eat and have a drink." And I was like, "Oh, sand landing on my feet here," So I goes off to this hotel, and we go in, and it's this pokey little hotel, and I go upstairs and following him, and we go into this little room, and it's this tiny little room, and he's like, he goes, have yourself a shower and all that, and make yourself comfortable. I'll go and get some food and that. And I was like, all right, okay, fair enough. So I did. I had a shower, and I just thought something, obviously I've been in the Marines, so I mean, I was just like, something ain't right here. I wasn't afraid, because him on his own, I thought to myself, I'd smash his face in, you know what I mean, if he started anything. But I just thought something ain't right here. And then as I was leaving, I heard two of them coming in, and they were talking. And so that was it. Back window open, across the tops, down the back, down the side alley, and back out into the street. And then they followed me out into the street. And I was across the street, and they were watching me wherever I was going. I could see them, and I thought, I've got, and eventually I lost them. But that was, it was an eye opener when I got there, and I thought, what is this place? What am I letting myself in for? And so I stayed in Barcelona for a little while, and I had rang back to my ex, and I said, look, is there any chance you could send a bit of money through, 50 quid? And 50 quid was a decent amount of money at the time. And so I was waiting at the Barclays Bank, and I told them I'm waiting for a transfer from the UK, 50 quid. And the girl behind the counter, she took a shine to me, and she was engaged. Anyway, she starts asking as I'm coming in there each day, where are you staying? I said, I'm sleeping. There's right by the train station. There's on the right hand side as you come out of the train station in Barcelona, there's a big, massive park with fountains and stuff like that. And a lot of all the kind of travelers at night go down there drinking sangria and all that kind of thing, and then just sleep because of safety in numbers. So I said, I'm sleeping down there. She goes, oh, you can't do that. She says, just meet me after work, and I'll take you something to eat. Have you eaten anything? And I was like, oh, no, I'm not. I'm starving, And so I met her after work and went for something to eat, and then I started living in her flat, and then and all the time she was engaged, and a partner was with a load of lads every night coming to the flat and on their scooters, because everybody was, not proper scooters, they were, but they were on the little scooters, and they were all shouting up in Spanish. She was shouting down at them like that, and obviously, we had a little bit of a thing, But whilst I was with her one night, a bloke she knew, who was a manager of a holiday complex in Menorca. We were having a meal, and he came over, and they were chatting away, and anyway, she says at the end of it, he wants to offer you a job in Menorca at the holiday complex, and you pay for the flight. It's only half an hour flight.
Yeah.
And pay for your flight, give you accommodation, and pay you X amount, whatever, a month, and you get all your meals free because it's like an all-inclusive thing. So you don't get paid until the end of the season. So you save all your money up, they will save it for you, and then the company. And I was like, yeah, right. So I ended up flying out there, and I ended up then working in the entertainment part of it, doing all the shows, and doing all the kids shows as well, taking it was a family place, so doing doing the tennis and anything to be a Wally and and make people laugh and do all that kind of stuff. Made a lot of friends out there, and come the end of the season, got on really well with this family, one particular family. And they said, what are you doing now then, the end of the season? And I said, I ain't got a clue. I don't know where I'm going to go. They said, we got a massive house, and we live in Hull, in a place called Hessel, which is right underneath the Humber Bridge. And they says, why don't you come and live with us? And I was like, that's how my life was.
You're like a stray cat.
You know what I mean? Well, this is it. I just went from pillar to post, and I was here, there, and everywhere. And just always, if I fell in a bucket of crap, I'd come out sucking my thumb. You know what I mean? And that's how my life was. And I went and lived with them for a while, and then I moved on somewhere else. And, but when you pick up habits, when you start doing bad things from an early age, and they start to become your norm, and they're gateways into other things, not for everybody, but for somebody like me who was looking for happiness. And I started thinking, well, happy, you know, what else do I need? You know what I mean? And actually, that's not happiness. That's short-term pleasure, you know, and it lasts and then it's gone. It's fleeting. It's gone. And then you need more of it. And then you need more of it. Happiness is when, you know, you're content with who you are, where you are, with what you've got. And, you know, you feel that you've been loved and you've been brought up right, and that you love others, and you're a good member of society, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Whereas, you know, somebody like me, I was just always seeking pleasure. And so by the time I got to Hull and then left Hull and come back down to Loughborough, you know, I mean, I was smoking, you know, 20 fags a day, and I was smoking probably about, you know, 20 joints a day as well. And like, you know, and I was drinking every night. And of course, you're young, your kidneys are fresh, you know what I mean? They've only just been born. You know, and so you're like, you don't feel it, you don't, you know, and you go all night, and then the rave scene started quite big, you know, back in the started in the 80s, obviously, but, you know, in the late 90s as well, it was still going strong. And I remember me and my mates, we were going all sorts of we're Hacienda, you know, we're going to the Hummingbird in Birmingham, you know, and I remember having my one and only acid tab, and it was 18 hours of pure psychedelic hell for me. And like, you know, it did something to me that for about 2 or 3 years affected me. And it felt, how I could describe it is like a door had opened in my head, and I'd seen reality for what it was. It was a pile of, that's what I thought, and that's what I felt was numb from down. No feelings of nothing. You know, I had nothing. I had no enjoyment, no pleasure in anything. I was drinking. You know, I never had acid again. I was still doing E's at that point, and you know, dabbled in all sorts of different things, but never ever. I went into a really deep, dark depression. You know, and just life. You know, life was just rubbish, boring, awful. You know, and I was like 23, 24 then going on. You know, and then eventually, well, my mum and dad had got divorced, you know, some years before. And my mum, she'd never got over what had happened to her as a kid. And, you know, I can't repeat that because it's for her to say, not me. But, you know, she never got over that. And then, of course, married my dad, who was exactly the same, you know, and so she had that all over again. And then she wasn't allowed to. She'd get beaten if she gave me a cuddle, because my dad was jealous. That's how, you know, stupid, you know, and bad it was. It must have been awful for her. And so I had more of an affinity with her as well, and a sympathy and with her, although I didn't have a relationship with her in the sense of a normal mother-child, because it just, there was nothing there. I didn't know her, you know. I don't know whether she felt she knew me, but I eventually, you know, 24, went and lived with her back in Woodhouse Eaves, but in a obviously completely different house. And then I applied to go to Melton Drama College, and I got in there easy. I mean, the audition, it was just ridiculous. It was so easy. Literally, I said, so what do you want me to do? And when I got there, and he says, okay, you're sitting on a bench, and someone comes up to you. You're in a park, and they tell you there's a wet paint sign there. What do you do? And so that was the audition. So obviously, I went, you know, I jumped up, and that's all I did. And they went, oh, great, you're in. And there was all this lovey-dovey crap, you know what I mean? And all this kind of like thespian kind of thing. And of course, I was from a council estate, you know, and I was like, what's going on here with all this and all the Shakespeare and whatever. And so, but it meant that I started being able to get my hands on some money because I got a grant and I got a bursary and all this kind of stuff. But by this time, I developed a gambling addiction. And so, as my grant was £777, right? That was my first grant. And that went on one horse. And I can tell you the jockey to this day, Adrian Maguire, right? Anybody who knows horse racing will know Adrian Maguire. And he used to be a fantastic, him and Richard Dunwoody, always fighting it out. And he was in the lead, miles in the lead. I was in Nottingham at Ladbrokes, and he was miles in the lead. It was over the sticks, and he come to the last fence, and it was like someone chucking a bag of spuds, you know, over it. And he just hit it, bang, that was it. And I was like, slow motion. No, I was like, please get back up and get on the horse. And like, it was like, and that was it. That was, and then of course, then all the lying has to start, you know. And I'm lying. I go, what am I going to do? Am I going to pay my rent now and all this kind of stuff? And so then I'd go back and I tell the college, oh, I need money, please. I need a bursary grant, which is separate to the other grant. And why? What's happened? I said, oh, my grand died. I made up a story that my grand died. And basically I had to go and pay for the funeral and I had to put my money in, you know, and all that. And they were always so sorry and all this. And they gave me money. And then, of course, I was blowing that. And I was borrowing money off the students and things like that. No, you know, it didn't all happen at once. It was all trickling, you know what I mean? And, you know, and because I was a likable, you know, chirpy character and all that as well. And I was good at acting and whatever, you know, I kind of got away with a lot of it. And of course I was still drinking, but, you know, I was drinking with other people's money and I was smoking other people's fags. You know, I was one of those people that always had a fag in the hand, always had a drink in the hand, but never paid for it, you know. And
remind me, I'll take you out for a drink.
No, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm sad to say that's how I was, and I was like that for a long time. You know, and that obviously did change, and it changed massively. And but at the time, that's how I was, and I was going gambling and whatever, and then I was coming in missing classes and stuff like that. But I was the best actor there. There's no doubt about it. Nobody else went on to do anything. But it came to about 3 weeks before. It was a BTEC national diploma, and about 3 weeks before I was due to graduate, and I got called into the office. The head of drama, and I was being kicked out. And so I got kicked out, and I went out kicking and screaming, shouting, you know, all this, F you, you know what I mean, who you, all this. Who's ever heard of Melton Drama College anyway? It's a load of crap. I'm going to RADA. This is what I said to him. I'm going to RADA. And like, I said it to his face, and he just smirked and laughed, and RADA don't take people like you, Johnny, and you know, and all this. And I was like, yeah, you wait and see. And then anyway, and that was it. I left there, and again, it was just another person in authority that I felt had let me down. So all of these were mounting up. You know, I'd had it in the Marines because I'd had some corporals or some sergeants or officers even overstep the line. You know what I mean? And go from, you know, training and with aggression to actual, you know, physical harm and stuff like that, and that you couldn't retaliate and stuff. So really, that's assault. You know what I mean? And some lads did retaliate. You know, knock 10 barrels out of them, and then of course they're out. But you know, and so I always looked at it as like, I guess, without noticing it at the time. All right, there's another one. All right, I'm going to prove you wrong now as well. You know, so I went and applied for Bristol, Old Vic, Central School of Speech and Drama, and RADA. I went and auditioned at all three, and I came out of RADA. Now, you'll know, obviously, Central London. RADA's main building is on Gower Street. Yep. Right in the West End. and it has a junction with Cheney Street, and it has a building on Cheney Street as well. So it owns two buildings there, right next to the what was a big medical. What's her name now? I can't remember her piggy name. It will come to me because I ended up staying there. Anyway, so I go down there and I go to audition on Cheney Street, and you know, we've been told how to do auditions and all that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Sit in your chair, do some breathing exercises, relax, and all that kind of thing. And there were people there all like, you know, warming their voices up, because you had to do a piece of Shakespeare, right? You had to do a modern piece, which was classed as something from 1960s onwards, and you had to sing a song of your choice unaccompanied. Right, so this is in front of a panel of people, and so I picked Benedict from Much Ado About Nothing. I picked a character called Les from a play called East by Stephen Burkoff, right, and then I sang a song called "Poisoning the Pigeons in the Park," right, which was a real old time tune, right. Anyway, I went in there, did my stuff, and then they sat me down to interview me, and they said, "So who do you think that you could be like?" And I had not long watched amazing film with Ralph Fiennes, Steven Spielberg film, you know, all about Auschwitz and what had happened there. And so Ralph Fiennes was really in the kind of the public eye at the time. I think he won an Oscar for his role, and I said to him, "Oh, yeah, you know, I could do that. What Ralph Fiennes did, I could do that, you know." And I could see them looking at each other like that, you know. But they liked me. They liked my cocky. I didn't know I was kind of being cocky. I wasn't trying to be. I guess I was confident in my ability, and you know, as a young guy, and at this time I was 25, and so they went, "Well, thank you very much. It's been lovely to, you know, meet you, and we'll be in touch." And I was like, oh, "Okay." So off I went, and I remember walking out of the building, and I remember I got there with an umbrella, and I got to the end of the road. It was raining. Got to the end of the road. Someone was shouting, "Mr. Kinch, Mr. Kinch!" So I was like, "Oh, my brolly." I mean, so I goes running back, and it was the receptionist. She says, "They want to see you back upstairs." And I said, "Oh, right." And so I went up there, and they says, "Okay, come in and sit down." And he says, "We don't normally do this, but, you know," I had told them a bit of my story, you know, my life, and how, you know, I'd left home and all that, because they asked, you know, where, you know, how I grew up. And they said, we don't normally do this, but we're going to let you know now that you have got a recall. And normally you have to wait a few months for a letter. And that waiting can be awful, you know. But I'd got a recall. And to me, that wasn't a recall. To me, that was an acceptance letter.
Yeah.
Right. And I could not believe it. I was thanking them, and I left there. I remember getting on the tube to get the train to come back up to Leicester and Loughborough, and then back to the village, and thinking, you know, these people know on this train. It's like honestly what I thought. These people know that I am going to RADA. You know, do they know who's been to RADA? All the famous people, you know what I mean, and all that. And so anyway, it's a 4-part audition over a year. So I knew I got a recall. I went for the recall, got through the recall, and then got another one. So the recall basically is the same thing as you did before, but you have to have an extra piece of Shakespeare, right? So I went down and did that. And then I got accepted for the next step, which was a half-day workshop at the RADA building on Gower Street. And I went and did that. And then I got invited to the full-day workshop. So this was like, 3 months waiting for a letter, another 2 months waiting for a letter, because I don't think we even had a phone in the house. And then I left my mum's house, so I didn't have an address. And my mum moved, and so I got into RADA, but I didn't know. And RADA was trying to get in touch with me. They were writing letters there. They were trying to find phone numbers, and eventually they managed to get hold of my aunt, and she managed to track me down and told me that RADA wanted me to. Well, Nicholas Barter. And if anybody wants to look that up. He was the principal at the time. He finished maybe, I don't know, 8 years ago, something like that. And he, I eventually rang up, and he says to me, "Jonathan, where have you been? We've been trying to get. You've got a place at RADA. You've got into RADA." Now you've got to bear in mind the immensity of what that meant. Because I got turned down from Bristol Old Vic and Central. Both had turned me down, right? But I didn't give a crap because I got in RADA. And in my head, day one, when they gave me a recall, I'd got in RADA. I'd been telling everybody up to that point, I've got into RADA. I'm going to RADA, right? And it was almost like I had made it happen because I was like, I believed it so much. And anyway, so he says, you've got into RADA. What are you going to do now then to raise the money? Now's the hard part. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, it's £40,000 to for the 3-year honours course. And I was like, right, okay. He says, well, we'll give you a leg up in terms of we'll set up a radio interview with BBC Radio Leicester for you. And you can go on there and talk about the arts and the lack of funding for the arts, and and then we'll see what we can do and start some kind of campaigning or whatever. So anyway, unbeknownst to me, I'm on there, BBC Radio Leicester, talking about the lack of the arts. Sue Townsend, who wrote Adrian Mole, is from Leicester. Now I joined the Marines with her nephew. Right? She didn't know me. She didn't know I'd joined the Marines with her nephew. I only found this out after, right? She heard me talking on the radio, rang up RADA and sent them a check, right? Not for the full amount, but she sent them a decent amount for the check. I didn't find this out till later either. And then they said, you've got to write off to everybody. And of course, writing letters, I wrote letters, and then I eventually wrote to football clubs because I thought they've got money. And I didn't follow a football club. I didn't, even though, I was born in Leicester, I was born right near Filbert Street on Welford Road, so the natural choice would have been the Foxes. But, I was always interested in boxing. That was my thing. And, but I wrote to all these football clubs and they all came back with no's. And I thought, what I'm going to do. So I thought I've got to be more professional. So, because I was just writing with a pen, So I went to the library, I think it was, or some kind of place where they'd let you use like a plinky plonk. It wasn't one of them really old typewriters. It was one of them like electronic type ones.
Yep.
Now, I wrote these letters, and I didn't realise that it was stuck on caps, which means that all as an author yourself, which means everything is in big letters, except for the letter I, which was in small. Now, I didn't know this. I just typed the letters out, and I was uneducated. I didn't do any exams or nothing. No. So whether it was in capitals or not, it didn't matter to me. I was writing a letter, right. and it just so happened that the I was in small. So anyway, I wrote to Laura Ashley Foundation, and I got a letter back, and they started the letter saying, firstly, we would just like to say how moved we were by your story, and also how moved we were by the fact that you put everyone else in capitals and yourself as a small I. And it was by pure chance, right? And they said, we would like to ask you to come down and audition. And we've never, ever sponsored the arts. This will be a first for us if we do it. Anyway, I went down to Covent Garden, went to their office. There was three old people, what looked like old people, sat there behind, desk, and I did some Shakespeare and all that. They loved it. 15 grand check there and then. Wow. All right. Yeah. And then I auditioned for a scholarship from Leicester County Council, got through to the finals, and then won the finals, and they gave me 18 grand. And that all happened in 2 weeks. Right, that all happened in 2 weeks, right? Honestly, it's crazy. So in 2 weeks of calling from Nicholas Barter, there was 40 grand.
Wow.
Right, and from nothing. And then, so I get my mate, his name was. I says, right, you got to take me down there because they've, for the first time, they're allowing students to stay in the building next door. And it's a double-barreled name of the building. Anyway, it's a nurses' accommodation, and because at the other end of Gower Street there's like hospital, and there's medical training and all that kind of thing. It's it's Bonham Carter House. That's it. Yep, because I was thinking Helen Bonham Carter. So it's Bonham Carter House. So I get a room there. Anyway, we pull up on the road, and there's no parking. You couldn't park there because it's such a busy road, Gower Street. So we found this parking space, and in this like crescent, and there was this green old Rolls Royce, and we reversed into this green old Rolls Royce, right? And we drove off. Anyway, and the reason why I'll tell you why that's important in a minute. We found some other space. We unloaded all the stuff, took it in, put into my room, and then he said his goodbyes and he drove off back up to Leicestershire. I goes into the RADA foyer, and Nicholas Barter comes out. He went, Johnny. He says, oh, because it was the day before the induction day. And he says, I've got somebody here that you might like to meet. And I'd not long watched Jurassic Park. Out from round the corner comes Richard Attenborough, right? And I have met Ben Kingsley. I've met all sorts. I've sang in front of Princess Diana. I've done all sorts of different things, right? But he was the only time that I went red, and I didn't know what to do in front of somebody who was famous. Right? And because I'd grown up watching all the black and whites, the Norman Wisdoms, the Harold Lloyds, and I'd grown up as well. And I saw him in Brighton Rock when he played Pinky. Yeah. You know what I mean? And his first film that made him. And of course I was like, and he's like, he says, I hear you're from Leicester. And he's tiny, 2 hearing aids. Are you from Leicester? I went, yes. He goes, up the Tigers, because he's from Leicester. Him and his brother, David Attenborough. And he says, come with me. And we went up these little steps, and there's this glass box on the wall, and there's a book open, and it was open at 1942. And he says, look on there. And right there, 1942, it said Richard Attenborough with his signature. And that was the day he signed in.
All right.
To come to RADA.
Yeah.
And he was the patron of RADA at the time. That's how I got to sing in front of Princess Diana. That was for an AIDS charity do. And then I went and had tea with him. Right? Now, I had just literally the day before, I was borrowing 60p for a bag of chips. and now I'm having tea with Richard. It was just insane. Now the green Rolls Royce was important because when we came back down, and in RADA there is a lift, one lift, right, in the foyer for faculty only, and that is not the students, but the teachers or any of the administration. And it's literally, you can fit probably 2 people in. Tiny little lift that just goes up to the top floor where they had the canteen. And he took me in the lift up there, and we came back down in the lift. And as we come out, outside the front is a green Rolls Royce, right? And I walked out the steps with him, and was his actual best mate, who was his driver all his life, said, "There's been a bit of an accident. Somebody has reversed into the bumper, and there was only a little ding, but it was on the chrome bumper, and he had a green Rolls Royce. This is no lie. You can check it up. This is factual. That he had a green Rolls Royce, and his number plate was RA111. Right, Richard Attenborough the third, or Richard the Third, I guess that's what he was going for. And so I was like, can you believe it? On my first day, we've reversed into Richard Attenborough's Rolls Royce, and I've had tea with him, right? And that was my first day, and I just thought, the streets here are going to be paved with gold. You know what I mean?
Of course, London is, of course.
It's London, you know what I mean? And everybody's happy. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Cockles and eels and all that. Come on, my son. You know what I mean? And all this. That's what I thought London was like. And I guess it is in places, and quite rightly so. It has its own unique culture. But I thought, this is the way I'm going to make it, And then I eventually met my classmates, and I met my teacher, who sadly passed away in November time last year. Her name was Dee Cannon, and she was a teacher there for 17 years. She was a wonderful woman, and it was her mother who was a teacher in New York who brought, which is widely known as probably one of the best acting techniques in the world, and made RADA what it was, called the Stanislavski technique. She brought that to RADA, and actually RADA implemented that because of her mother. And then Dee went on to then carry on after her mother and teach. And so sadly she passed away. But but of course, wherever you go in life, you're always going to bump into yourself. So even if you go to RADA and you're an alkie, and you're a druggie, and you're a gambler, and you're a hoodlum, and you're a no good, you know what I mean, whatever, then that's all there with you. You're not left that back in Leicester.
No.
You know what I mean?
No.
It's all going to come out. It's all going to find a way to come out. And of course, I just saw opportunity after opportunity. I thought, there's 40 grand somewhere. You know what I mean? I'm going to get my hands on that. And I did get my hands on a lot of it. And I gambled a lot of it. And I was trying to get people to help me to replace it. I was borrowing money off some of the people. And I'm ashamed to say it now, but, that's how I was in the time. Borrowing money off people, again, getting people buying you beers because you didn't have any money. And I did the same thing, bursary, going to the bursary, asking for money and making up stories. And then then I discovered cocaine, and and then I was into all that. And of course, that's not cheap. And then you're out in Soho, and you're out in different places. You're all over the place, and mixing with the oi polloi. And of course, you've got a green pass because you're at RADA. Because being at RADA at that time, opened doors. Yeah, it really genuinely did, because of the people, the quality and the prestige of the people that had been to RADA and that were famous, and because of its history. You go in theatres and get into theatres free, and all. You just tell people you're at RADA and they'd buy you a drink. And so I kind of lived that lifestyle. But it just caught up on me until eventually I was in and out of Nicholas Barter's office for all the wrong reasons, and came to a point where the years or a year and a half's fees had dried up, and they'd been paid, but there was a year and a half in lieu that I needed to pay. for the next year and a half, but it had disappeared because I'd spent it, right? And so he says, the last chance, he says, Johnny, I'm going to give you a week off, right? And if you think you can go and come back with a new sponsor, you know. Now, I had a grand left in the bank at that time, and all I did for that week was come back and get absolutely hammered with that grand.
Yeah.
I just didn't know what I had got in front of me. And I eventually went back, and they had locked my room and confiscated my stereo and everything like that, because I bought it with someone else's money. And they'd given it them and everything, and that was it. We didn't leave on a bad note, because eventually I would go back years later, and that was after being homeless. Yeah. I'd go back, and he would welcome me with open arms, and I went back and did an ITV program there, which went out on Christmas Day. And so I left Brada, and of course, again, it was another, like, you know, for me, I felt like, you know, you know what I mean? With RADA, you know, I can do it on my own anyway. You know, I don't need to go to RADA. And again, not within a short period of time, I was literally on the streets. And I was only on the streets for a short period of time then. And then I moved back to Leicester, and I kind of, I never rekindled a relationship with my father, but let's just say I utilised what I could for my benefit when it was necessary for me, because I felt he owed me, you know. And at the time, he had left the ministry and everything, burnt all his books, and had bought a pub in Leicester called the Victory, which was opposite the Tigers football ground, and it's where all the Leicester Tigers used to go to drink. All the fans and all the City fans for football all used to come in there as well. So on a Saturday, you'd have the two in at different times, you know. And I went and worked there and worked behind the bar there for a while, and still, you know, same thing, doing the Charlie and all that, and getting in trouble and fighting and whatever. And then I was pretty good at singing, and I was pretty good at you know, kind of presenting stuff. You know, I wasn't afraid with having a mic in my hand. You know what I mean? You could just leave me standing there, and I would just go out into the crowd, and I'd do whatever, you know. And so one night we got invited over to the Meridian, which is like a business park, and there was a big like bar, like club type bar there, and they had this. It was a men's night, you know what I mean? So we were all sat around the tables, and there was, you know, bowl in the middle, and it was literally. I mean, I'm being quiet because wife's up there, but it was, I mean, everything in your face.
Yeah.
Anyway, the guy who was comparing it was rubbish. And the woman who had organised it, who owned this company called the Rhythm Angels, good name. Anyway, she was from Newcastle. She said to him, get off. You know what I mean? You're rubbish. I'll take over. And I think it was my brother went over and said, listen, my brother, you know, he's done loads of comparing and stuff like that. You just get him on, he'll do it. So I went over, and anyway, I was comparing, and I was having a right laugh. And because I was comparing, then when the break was on, I got to go into the dressing room, and they're all sitting around, you know what I mean, all like this and whatever, and talking and everything. And while we're all doing Charlie, and I mean, that's what it was like.
Yeah.
And the woman who owned the company, that was telling me, they were going to Ibiza in about 2 weeks' time, and they'd got a load of gigs out there at a club called Pasha, and also there was like a big massive event on because there's the old town and the new town, and there's a big massive event on MTV there and everything like that. And there was a girl who was like her main stripper, if you like. And her claim to fame was she'd been in she'd been in all of the magazines and all that, but her main, what she liked to call on her claim to fame, was she was in the video for I'm a Firestarter.
Oh, right, yeah.
Right? Yeah, and so she was in that. Her name was Vicky Lee. And blonde, big, all that, and we kind of clicked anyway. Not in a fancied each other way, but it just, she liked my comparing, and just out of the blue, she said, "Well, I'm not going if you're not bringing him as a compare."
All right.
And I'm like, oh, yeah, right. I am free. I'm free. I'm available. And so anyway, I did eventually go there, but how I got there was not the route that I intended. My dad was also there that night as well. That's how far he had fallen from the religious tree.
Yeah.
He was now with the Rhythm Angels.
Oh, right.
Instead of the
other angels, yeah.
And so anyway, I was still working at the pub, and we had a row. We had a row at the pub, and of course, I was a bloke. At this time, I was a man. I was no longer a boy. I was a man, and he came at me. I was sat in the snooker room, or the pool room, should I say, in the pub, and the pub was closed. And he comes in there with a kitchen knife, and he's having a go at me. And I know he's in the kitchen making something, but I know why he's carrying that knife. All right, and so I'm thinking, you have gone over the line this time, So anyway, I raise up at him as well. He chases me upstairs with the knife, and we go into I go into the front room, and we have a tussle. The knife's thrown to one side, thankfully. We have a tussle, and smack him one, knock him to the ground. I jump on top of him, and what he would sit over the top of me and use my own hands to smack my own face. Go, stop doing it. What are you doing that for? You know what I mean? And he'd do that. And of course, I was powerless. I was a kid. And so I grabbed hold of his arms as a man, and I started smacking him in his face with his own hands. Says, how do you like it? Right. Yeah. And I knew that this particular door, right, that if I slammed it, because we couldn't shut that door because there was no handle on the inside, right? So if I slammed it, and I have to slam it, because on my way out, so I knocked him down. I slapped him around the face with his own hands, and then I jumped up, ran out the door. So I knew he'd come after, and I thought, it's going to end up really bad. So I slammed the door, which bought me time because he's got to find a way now to get out of that door.
Yep.
And I go downstairs into the bar, and his wife, he had remarried. Funnily enough, he married a woman called Elizabeth Taylor. And nowhere near as classy, I can tell you. And but literally by that time, the police were there. I just got downstairs. They came through the door. Liz had obviously heard all what was going on.
Yeah.
The police were there. And so then I was caught between a rock and a hard place. Right? And it was like, Dad didn't want to say he'd had a knife and all that, you know what I mean? And he said, look, I just want him out. I don't want him in here anymore. Right? You know what I mean? He's got to leave the premises. Now that meant I was trespassing, and the police duty was to actually escort me off the premises.
Yeah.
So I said, can I get my bag? Yes, you can get your bag. So they kept my dad down there and got a bag. Police took me to the police station, allowed me to use the telephone. I rang up this woman from the Rhythm Angels. She paid for a taxi from Leicester to Newcastle Airport, where she'd booked me a flight already, and
Right.
then I jumped on the plane with one of the so I was like, I was going around in my head, and then where I'm going again, and I'm back on the road again. You know what I mean? What's going on? Now I'm doing all the clubs. Eventually, that goes pear shaped, and I end up not getting paid, and all I get is enough money for a flight home. I fly back home, and I moved down to London and stopped with Vicky Lee, and we went to a bar in Chelsea. It was called the K Bar. Do you ever remember it?
I've heard of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've only been there that once. I can just remember it was called the K Bar because because I can remember there was a drink out at the time, a cider called K bottle. It had like a red K on it. We went to this bar, the K Bar, anyway, and in Chelsea, and it was like, it was VIP only, and because I was tagging on her coattails, I was allowed in with her, and I can remember meeting Mark. Oh, what's his name from Take That? He had Mark from Take That. Oh, yeah. He was in there, sat in the back in the corner on his own, like just looking all depressed. And I went over and chatted with him. Said, "What's going on?" Why? He went, "Oh, just finished an album. He was living with his gran, I think in Lancashire or Lake District or something like that." So anybody who knows about this will know I'm talking the truth. We're talking away, and he basically, the Sony or whoever it was turning down all his music because it was too dark because he was depressed. He was writing stuff like that. Anyway, cut a long story short, I ended up same thing, falling out with her whilst I was in her flat, her calling the police turning up, me with my bags, I had a suitcase, and marched me off out of there. I walked, I can't remember where I walked to, but I know it was where News of the World was based, and the Sun newspaper, and it was right on the Thames.
Right. Okay.
And basically, I rang News of the World. I rang News of the World. I said, because Vicky Lee had been in there all the time, you know what I mean? And on page whatever it was, I think it was page 5 in that paper. Not that I get it anymore, obviously. But I rang him. I said, "You want a story?" He says, "I've got a story." I says, "You know Vicky Lee?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Oh, out with a cokehead, she's a proper cokehead and all this kind of thing." And like this bloke said, "I'll come meet you. Came met me in a pub." And then they said, "I think we can do a story with this, mate. Probably get about 10, 12 grand out of this." And I was like, "Oh, sweet," you know what I mean? And so I says, "Oh, I've got 2 suitcases here." He says, "Oh, we'll jump in a cab." And we went down to where their offices were, but we only got to the security gates. He says, "You can't come through here." He says to the security, he says, "Let him store his bags." And they had, behind the security, they had all of these compartments, like, with keys, locks and all that. So I stored there, and he says, "You can come back and use them whenever you want. The security guys will let you in and out." But I had nowhere to go. So I ended up, so that's how I started properly sleeping rough. And I made my way into the West End, and I camped out on the doorstep of St Mungo's, which was a hostel on Endell Street, opposite Shaftesbury Avenue Theatre. And the play that was on at the time, what made me laugh, because it was called Rent, and like I never had any, so it was always like every time I saw it, it was like, yeah, thanks for reminding me, you know what I mean, like, and I stayed on the streets sleeping rough for a while before eventually I managed to get into the hostel and be accepted into the hostel. But that wasn't easy, and that was a rough life as well. You know, it's not prison rough, but you know, there's still a hierarchy in there, and there's also a lot of things, especially in the all male ones. This was an all male one with 9 floors, right? 9 floors with it, because it used to be an old school, and basically, depending on what floor you were, was if you're on the top floor, you were the best chance of moving on, and also you were the healthiest. If you were on like floor 3 or 2, you had either got, you know, you were either seriously ill, you were HIV positive, or whatever. So because they have to have their own, you know, area, own room, own showers and things like that, because these guys were all alcoholics as well, and they were all using needles and stuff like that. And they used to wrap their bottles with black tape on it and put HIV positive on it, so other alkies wouldn't nick their bottles.
Yeah.
And they put me on floor 2. First day in there, floor 2. I'm falling asleep. Now, you know my book. You know, we'll talk about that. I've fallen asleep, and like, you know, I'm knackered. I am knackered. I'm out, and I'm on this green mattress, which is plastic green. You know what I mean, like for people who saw themselves and whatever. And I'm looking at the wall, and I wake up and I hear this breathing, and I think, who the frick's that? I don't hear no one come in, and I can hear this moving about, and I just kind of like really slowly move my head and like trying to have a look, see. And first thing I see this guy with one arm with whatever he had, something tied around his stump, and he's injecting into his stump, and I'm like, you know, screw this. I ain't having any of this. So I jump up and I go, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Right. He's like, and his name was Steve, and he used to go around all the time. You'd see him throughout the West End, you know, going into when people sat outside restaurants and all that, and he'd stick his stub in their faces like that. Give somebody, got any change? Got any change? And of course, people would just go like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
get rid of him. And well, I went straight downstairs to the office and goes, listen, I am not staying in that room with that guy. You know what I mean? I don't do needles. I don't do any of that. I said, why have you put me in a room there like that? So I waited and waited. And eventually they moved me into the room. Well, I had to fight my way in there. It's like anybody else, because you had to just weigh people up, you know, and you didn't know who was capable of what. And some people, of course, were desperate. So they would do desperate things. And of course, you go from hostel to hostel, and there were different levels of violence or, you know, egregious people in different hostels, depending on where you were at. Worst one I went to was one in Soho on Dean Street, which was called The Bridge, which is, I think now it's like luxury flats or something like that. But I had a room that looked out, and right out the window there was a jazz club that was went down steps underground. And I can remember that. Remember walking down the street in Soho Square, and I was just as the square splits off, and you're walking down Oxford Street. Sorry, not Oxford Street. Oxford Street. Yeah. And basically, I could see on one side of the road a guy in the dark cooking up on a spoon, right? And on the other side of the road, there was like a couple with candle-lit meal, chinking their wine glasses, you know, in this posh restaurant. And I stood in the middle, and I was just like, you know, what the hell is going? What is wrong with this picture? You know what I mean? And I always said to myself, I don't know who said the phrase, but, you know, I might be in the gutter, but I'm staring at the stars, you know, and I thought, I'm not always going to be here. And eventually I got out and met a girl and got into. She said to me, "Look, why don't you go for this TV program? They're doing these auditions, nationwide auditions, and nothing like this had really happened before. So it was pre-Pop Idol and all of that. It was called Soap Stars.
I remember
and
that.
they were, yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Do you remember the guy who shouts, "Who's the daddy?"
Yeah.
Yeah, that's me.
No.
Yeah.
Oh right.
Yeah. So I goes for this audition at Aston, and guess where it's at? Aston Villa Football Club, where my dad preached with Billy Graham.
Yeah.
Right. So I go to there for my audition to get to get past the first round of Soap Stars.
Yeah.
And I got past the first round, so I got asked back the next day. So I went back the next day. I got back through the next round, and it went on and on and on until eventually I got into the live rounds. So the live rounds were then what we'll put out on TV, and that's when I was wearing a T-shirt that said "Who's the governor" on it, and it certainly weren't me. When now I know who the governor was, yeah. And and all that, but it was just like one of those trendy phrases at the time, of course.
Yeah.
And so eventually I get through all these live rounds and I get down to the last two dads in the program. And I didn't get the actual part, but I got an agent who eventually got me parts in like the Bill Doctors, Paradise Heights with Neil Morrissey, Ralph Little, people like that. But again, wherever you are, you're going to bump into yourself. And all the past came back, you know what I mean? And I drank myself stupid, did stupid things at parties, with celebrities and stuff like that. And I ended up on the streets again. Oh. And and then I came back to Loughborough and kind of given up on that dream because I'd blown it so many times. And I was in a flat, and a mate had been looking for me. Now, I didn't know this, but he rang up my mum. He'd got her number, but he had become a Christian. Now, all right, okay, I'll go with you. I'm thinking I'm going to tap up a few old ladies, you know what I mean, for a few quid, have a biscuit and a coffee, and I'll be gone. So I get there, and I have this really weird experience, let's just say. And I come away that day, and I'm having my dinner, and I start crying into my dinner, and I don't know what's going on. And it's like somebody's reached inside my chest, and touched me in a place that no one else can reach, and found a soft spot amidst all the leather, and it scared me. And I thought, they're like a cult. What's going on? Something's weird. And so I avoided him, but I couldn't avoid him always. And eventually I went back with him. And this preacher was from Los Angeles. He came out, he was preaching, and I got the same feeling and all that kind of thing. And he says, everybody's eyes closed. If anybody wants to give their life to Jesus, put your hand up, and everyone's eyes closed. And so I'm sitting there thinking, I ain't putting my hand up. And my hand starts going up. My hand goes up. And he goes, "I see you," and I pull it down real quick, like, you know what I mean? And then I go to the back of the building at the end of the service, I have a chat with him. We say this prayer, and apparently then I'm a Christian. So I said this prayer, and I'm going around that night doing Charlie, and drinking in the pub, telling everyone I've just become a Christian. You know what I mean? Great, you should try it. And then I was doing that for a little while, and then really got convicted about what I was doing, drinking. but I was tapping people up as usual, and and this geezer comes in the pub, comes up to me, and he says, "You're drinking a lot for a Christian," and then he just walks out, and I didn't know this guy, I'd never seen him before, and it freaked me out. I ran off, went off home, and I felt like I had a hangover in the middle of the day, and I felt like this was like God speaking to me. So if this is how you want me to explain how I believe God speaks to me, or did speak to me, and it's like, it's not an audible voice, it's an inner voice that is an inner guiding voice, and it was asking me questions. And the question it was asking me was, if you have made an inner decision, why can't it be seen on the outside? So in terms of, if you're saying you're a Christian and you've made a decision to follow Jesus, then why are you acting completely the opposite? So that was, for me, was a crossing point where I really took it seriously, and I started going to church regularly and everything. And 5, maybe 2-3 weeks into that, I stopped smoking, gambling, swearing, drinking, doing drugs, all in one go. And then I stopped all of that for best part of 11 years.
Wow.
I don't drink now. I don't do any of those tell you about as we go further on. But so I stopped all of those things, and I even stopped medication. I was on antipsychotics and antidepressants and stuff like that. I stopped medication, and the doctors couldn't believe it. I'd been on them for so long, and I just came off them. I didn't detox down or anything like that. I just came off them, and I believed. I mean, I believed, and basically all I did, really, even though I did believe, and I still do believe in something, a greater being, a greater cause. It's not like it was the moment I had that, what I felt was the bigger revelation. And it was basically me as an actor finding another stage.
Yeah.
And basically, yeah, I turned my life around. I changed my life, but then I became a preacher, and I was going around telling my testimony so many times to everybody in the street. Now, telling somebody I've become a Christian in the street was easy for me, because you try selling a big issue, right? That's hard. Yeah. Telling someone you become a Christian, that's easy. I ain't asking them for money. I'm trying to give them something. I'm trying to say to them, I'm giving you the key to the kingdom. That's basically what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
I've been freed. You can be freed, and all that kind of thing. And so I did that, and then people started noticing I got a gift, they'd call it. You've got anointed. You've got a gift for this, and all that kind of thing. And then I got took in that direction, and I put all my passion into it. 10 years, and I went off to Bible college a year into it. When I got baptized, I mean fully submerged, which is from the real Greek word baptizo, which means to submerge. Yeah. I had an electronic tag on my ankle, right? Because I had not long been out the nick. Now, I went to Walford Road Prison, and I went there, for fighting and stuff like that. And I wasn't in there a long time. But you know what? I was in prison for a long time. I wasn't in prison for a long time, but I was in prison for a long, long time. I was doing a life sentence. Now, I know it's not comparable to being behind bars, but at the end of the day, I was killing myself more than behind bars.
Yeah.
By being out, because I was listening to the wrong voices and making the wrong choices. And so I was in a worse prison, in a sense. So when I went into prison, and I was in prison in here already, it was like putting a magnifying glass on it. And it was, for me, I just I freaked out. Funnily enough, I was thinking of people that have probably gone into prison for petty things, and ended up staying there for a long time. I'm not going to mention any names, but lots of us know of people like that that's happened to, and I felt that was going to happen to me, because I felt what's going to happen is I'm going to have to do something to hurt someone to back my corner, to back myself, and then I'm going to get more time, and then it's going to happen again, and I'm going to get more time, then I'm never going to get out, and it freaked me out. I kept pressing the buzzer, and this was on the first day, and the screws came down on the first day. I got put in the block on the first day, absolutely Billy Bolt naked, and they threw a straitjacket at me, and the block. But flat. I didn't have a toilet. There was no sink. All I had was cardboard, whatever to do my business in. And there was a little tiny, wasn't a window, but just bars there. That's all. That's what it was in Welford Road. And it was awful for me. I mean, it's awful for anybody, but I can only give my experience. And I was like a child, like in fetal position, you know what I mean, with this straitjacket. That's all I had, and I was totally naked. And I would have done anything to get out of there, to be free, I would have given anything to have someone just comfort me or anything, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I remember, I think it was like on the third or fourth night of being in there, that I was in the dark, and I just said, God, if you're real, you know what I mean, get me out of here and I'll be a good lad. Now, eventually I got out and I was a good lad for a little bit, and then I wasn't a good lad again. So that didn't work out. But it scared me enough to never go back into prison. Yeah. I never went back into prison. So it did its job. Yeah. The screws did me a massive favour. They threw me in there. They were being horrible and shouting and I'm glad they did. Because you know what? It scared the crap out of me. And I'll be honest with you. And, I'm glad. There's nothing, there's nothing tough about saying, oh, I've done 20 years. It's not a clever thing, is it? No. So anyway, that ties in with the God thing as well, because, obviously when I got into the church then, and that then took me all over the country, and I was preaching in different places. And, of course, I had given up all these, addictive things. I thought I'd given them up, but all that had really happened was they'd been brushed back so far back, and I was so full and focused on the scriptures and what I believe God had got planned for me, and where I was going and what I was doing, and my if you like, my campaign of where I was going to, go and tell people about Jesus and all that kind of thing. That I thought I was cured. I thought I didn't have depression. I thought I didn't have OCD, and I wasn't ADHD anymore. But I just was the last person to see it. And then one day, so anyway, I go off to Bible college, as you know, and all that. So I've told you about that. I met my wife there on the first day. And I just said, hey, Annika, my name's Johnny, and I went to RADA, because I'd asked someone before. I said, who's that girl over there? She says, oh, that's Annika. She's part of the Bible college, but she's doing the drama part of it. So I thought, and she's a looker, you know what I mean, a right looker. So I thought, I'll go and do the old RADA line, So I go the RADA line, and it worked. Anyway, 6 weeks later, we were engaged.
All right.
We've been married 15 years this year. We've got 2 kids. Brilliant. And how my life changed. Now, I cannot deny that being a Christian and being in the church and following a set of guidance, rules, and things like that did change my life. It changed my life. It did massively. But there was still so many things that I had not dealt with. Nobody had ever come up to me and said, Johnny, what happened to you when you was a kid? Let's deal with that. Let's deal with some of these things, so that, when you've got kids. This was before I had kids. No one came up, no one came put their eye on, because they saw this person who could preach, And so they were more kind of enamored by that. Oh, look, this guy is always, he can tell you the scriptures just like that, recite the scriptures just like that. How do you know all these verses? They'd say to me. I say, well, I just read the Bible, all the time, and I did. And but the thing was, I always used to say to people, I would rather live one verse of the Bible than be able to quote all of it. Yeah. If I can actually just live one, it's hard enough to just go through a whole day and be nice to everybody.
Yeah.
And think nice thoughts. I mean, who can really put their hand up and say they've been through one whole day and never thought a bad thought? Right? Who can put? Nobody. I don't think there's anybody.
That is it.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And so there's me. I've then got invited to America. I've got invited to Albania for a tour of America, to go to Kentucky prison, to speak to the lifers there, to go to Manhattan, Staten Island, the Bronx, Cincinnati, Louisiana, Louisville, Ohio, right down to Lafayette, Louisiana, right all near there. But right before that happened, about 5 weeks before that happened. Now, I love a watch, right? I love a watch. I've always loved watches, and I've always loved shoes. Well, it's just been one of them things. And, but I hadn't realized that for about 5 months, I had started getting obsessed with watches, like to the point of buying books and reading on the movements and all of that, and looking for my what they call the Grail, the Holy Grail watch, your perfect watch, right? And I was slowly getting more and more stressed. And you're the last to know it. You're the last to know you're having an heart attack. You're the last to know you're having a stroke. You're the last to know it when you have a breakdown, right? Everyone else around you is going like, he's working too much, he's doing this, that, and the other, and you just don't believe it. I'm fine. Came home. I had been in Derby all day, right? I'd been there looking at watches in shops all day when I should have been working, right? And then whilst I was there, I was on the phone haggling with this company, saying, I've seen a watch in their shop. Can I get me at a cheaper price and all this kind of thing? And I fell out with them on the phone, and I was stressed out. And I came home, normal evening kind of thing, tea and whatever, went to bed. Some point in the night, maybe, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, wake up, and I am having like a seizure, like a fit. And my teeth are like that. And my wife woke up because the bed is shaking so much, and I'm going like this. I'm fully conscious, and I'm saying to her, I don't know what's happening. And at the same point, or at the immediate point that I woke up, I got tinnitus, which, for those who don't know, it can come in many, many forms. But for me, it's a very, very loud, and I can hear it now over my loud voice, over our conversation. I can hear it now. I can hear it if we were in a busy room. I can hear it over everything. Oh. It's so loud, right? And it drives a lot of people, sadly, to take their life. And that's true. And I'm part of the National Tinnitus Society because, I want there to be a cure for it. But when I got it, the seizure wasn't a problem. The tinnitus was the leftover residue of the stress, and I was left with it now for life, right? And when you have got that instantly, it's like if you could hear a car alarm in the distance, and you could perhaps deal with it. But if it's going off and you're sat in the car, you're beside, after 5 minutes, you're like, I can't take it much more of this. You know what I mean? and that was exactly what it was like, and it was almost that loud in terms of as a car alarm. But and the thing was, it was everywhere I was, and no one else could hear it.
Right.
So no one else, and so no one else can see it.
No.
So it's a disability, and it threw me into an instant depression. And my immediate go-to wasn't alcohol; it was the Bible. I went reading the Bible, reading the scriptures like it was going out of fashion, like I was searching for something, and I spiraled into a depression, which basically then led me cancelling going out to Albania. But I thought, I can't cancel going to America, and I had to go to America. And I can tell you now, hand on heart, I was a broken man. When I preached in the Bronx, I cried my eyes out behind the pulpit because I was so desperate, and people in the congregation cried as well because they felt my pain. And I wasn't talking about me. I was saying, we've all got our problems. I said, I think I've got some mental health issues, and I was so open about it. In churches, you don't do that. People don't do that.
No,
they don't. There's the person out the front.
Conservative places, in a churches.
Yeah, the person out the front doesn't say, I've got a mental health problem, and I've got OCD, and I've got ADHD, and I've got tinnitus, and God can't heal it. And because they don't want to hear that. No. They want to hear good things that make them feel good, and that I've been to church on a Sunday, everything's rosy. You know what I mean? And I went, and I tell you what, I came back from America. It was the worst trip of my life. It was absolutely awful. I didn't know what to do. I had contemplated suicide again because I had before when I was in the hostels and when I was homeless. Now I contemplated it, and that's an awful thing to think of and to say, but I had, and I genuinely had, and and I'd got kids, and they were young, and then Christmas came, and it was Christmas Day, and my brother bought me a bottle of wine, and I thought, I've not had a drink for, I've not had a drink for 10, 11 years now. A glass of wine's not going to do me any harm, So I had the bottle of wine, and it was like, oh, the tinnitus, it's like really calmed down. Because, well, of course, the tinnitus hadn't calmed down. It's just that I was half cooked.
Yeah.
Because I'd not had any alcohol for 11 years. Yeah. I'd just had a bottle of wine. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so then that became my go-to when things were too much. And then what started off as the medicine became the problem. And I was drinking more. And then got 2 years in, and then I was drinking 2 bottles a night. And then I started drinking 2.5 bottles a night. And then I got to 3 bottles a night. And then I was like 3 years in, and I was drinking 3 bottles a night. And then I got to 4 years in, I'm still drinking 3 bottles a night. And my liver is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I am having tests, and they're coming back with worse and worse and worse results. My skin was terrible. I'd put on, best part of 2 stone. And of course, and the last year of it was amidst all the COVID, you know what I mean? And my wife, in the midst of all of this, who has never drank, never drinks, never swears, never anything like that, even though I've now left the church in the sense of going to church and things like that. Like I say, I still I've got a seed of faith in me, and I believe that we are not a mistake, and I believe that we are all special and we are all unique, and there is a good life for all of us, and there are decisions that we can make today that can change tomorrow, and we don't have to be bitter about things. We can just get better. It's about making choices. It's about flipping the script. It's about turning things around. And I had tried, and I had been to AA, and I had been to, all these different things to try and stop drinking. But how I stopped before was through faith, and it stopped like that within a day. And I'd stopped, and I hadn't drank for 11 years. But somebody once said to me, if you go back to old fires, all you find is ashes. And I realized that I can't go back to faith to find the result, because I'm a different person now.
Yep.
And I can't recreate something that created itself. So I had to find a different way. And my wife had started going, I had told her about it, but my wife had started having these Zoom meetings with this group called Hetties, and therefore people whose partners are alcohol dependent or have an addiction. And me seeing her doing it, and having gone through 4 years of giving her hell as well, torment, and not having to go at her and stuff like that, but just that she hated alcohol, and she's seeing her husband falling apart, somebody she loves, and just falling apart, and it's not, it must have been awful for her. But her leaving me alone instead of nagging me and keeping an eye on me and all that, her leaving me alone and deciding to seek help for herself left me to look at myself.
Yep.
I had nowhere else to look. I no longer had her as someone, I've got to fight her off. The only person the problem was me. And I had to decide, am I willing to go down that road? And so I joined a group called CGL, which is a charity in Nottingham. And I had to go to my GP and say the very difficult words to say: I'm an alcoholic and I need help.
No.
And I never thought I'd say that, ever. I never thought I'd be an alcoholic, for one, because I was the one that was going around changing other people's lives. Yep. I was the one that was going around preaching, teaching. I was the one who was working at a hostel, looking after people. That's where I wrote my book. I was looking after people who had the same problems as me. So I went to this group. They said, you've got to have these blood tests, how many units you're on. I had to halve my units over a period of time before they would give me a home detox. And you have got to want it. And I wanted it. I was sick and tired of getting up every day. I wanted to die. As soon as I woke up, I wanted to die, literally, because I knew what the day meant. And I knew that the animal inside me had smashed everything up again, and the human inside me had to try and pick it up and try and piece it together. But by 3 o'clock, the animal would be back out ready for more. And that's exactly what happened. And so with their help, I then went and did a home detox, and which was a 7-day detox. And I am now 80 days dry today. And
well done, Johnny, for that. Well done, mate. Well done.
I appreciate it. And it changed my life. But also, amidst even all of the alcohol, the human spirit is strong. And when we are put in a position like this pandemic, which has ruined so many people's lives and businesses, and lots of people have passed away due to it, if you have an opportunity to recreate yourself, then take that opportunity. And I had 2 massive acting jobs that were coming up, and they were just snatched away from me. So I started a production company, and I built a website, and then I started building a social media following, and it took off from there. And I wrote a script, and then that script won some awards, and one was at Cannes and one was in Paris. And then now we've got funding to the amount of about $500,000 for that film to be made later this year. I'm right now in the middle of making myself the set of a film that is a short film that also has just won some awards, called Lot, which is a psychological thriller. And so, I have found, not only during the most probably difficult time this country's had since the Second World War, in that most difficult time, I have blossomed, and it shows that you can. It doesn't matter. And if I can do it now, I can do it anytime.
Yep.
Because this is the time where people are going for the bottle. And this is the time where I've given it up. This is the time where people are depressed because of their jobs being taken. This is the time where my jobs were taken. So I created jobs.
Yep.
And 50 people will have jobs this year from me directly, just from me creating some stuff.
Johnny, you've mentioned the project, you've mentioned the film. I obviously know what it's called. Can you tell the viewers the name of the film and roughly what the film's about?
Certainly, the film's called The Methodists, and that's not a pun on church name, The Methodists. It just came to me because one of the characters in it, who I wrote myself into it, basically, the lead character, one of the lead characters, his name is Harvey, and he is very methodical. And so I thought, well, I'll call it The Methodists. And it's about two Leicester lads who are born and bred in Leicester, born a stone's throw from each other, but never met each other. And they, one of them has, started his own little kind of business, a collection business, you know what I mean, for a couple of people who need, oh God, go and collect this money from this geezer or go and do this job. And he's doing this at a young age, and he's got a nice motor and all that. And he goes into this place and he meets this other guy who is completely different to him. 6'4", the other guy is, tattooed, ends up by the end of the film tattooed from head to toe, literally, full gold teeth, the whole lot. And they become partners. And then they go on this journey, and we quickly morph from 1989 when they meet, and and then we come into present day time. And one of the guys, Winks, the other Methodist, is a little bit trigger happy or slap happy, and he doesn't, he likes to tear up and stuff like that. He's got a short fuse, you know what I mean, and he basically just kills somebody, kind of by mistake, but it just so happens that it's the wrong person, and it just so happens that the said person's mother is one of the most feared family, bosses in the country, or part of the country, so to speak. And so, as it all starts to unfold, there's grasses, you know what I mean, and then there's people are sent to try and kill the Methodists. One of them is Parker, who's a hit woman, who's played by Andriana Christoph, who was the body in The Cube, the TV program, The Cube. She is the body, so she is in the film, and also who is in the film is Julianne White. Now, Julianne White was she was played opposite Amanda Redman and Ray Winston and Ben Kingsley in Sexy Beast.
All right.
So she was the only other female. So she's in our film. And so to go from just, I've got no work with a laptop, but I've got a laptop, I've got a brain, I've got, and even then I was alcohol dependent, and now it's just exploded because the real, me is coming out. But The Methodist really is the big film. It's a massive dark comedy, as well as it's not your ordinary. It's basically, the tagline is not your ordinary hitman. It's not another London gangster movie, or a typical kind of Reservoir Dog or something like that. This is your proper Brit flick with everything in it and more than you can possibly expect. And there might be some familiar faces in this film, Frank. Apparently. Anyway, that's going to be hopefully filmed later this year. With obviously we're heading towards lockdown freedom, hopefully, if everyone behaves, and then we can get back to doing some proper filming. And yeah, you can, if you want to find out more about what I'm doing, you can go to my website. It's 3Ws filmingproduction.com. That's filminc productions.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Johnny Kinch or at film_inc_prods, which is a bit of a pain, but you follow me, Johnny Kinch, and then you can find the rest on there. And you can also just follow the Methodists, just at the Methodists. We've got thousands of followers on there, and even Disney followed us, believe it or not. So who knows where we're going to end up and what we're going to do.
And of course, Johnny, you've obviously not the latter part of your story, but the more gruesome side of it, shall we say? You've put that into a book, which is called Johnny Be Good, which is ironic because quite a large portion of the book you've been far from good. But clearly you've reached a point in your life now where, to me, you've defeated your demons. You've really risen up and discovered yourself, and more to the point, you've discovered the talents that you've got. And I think it's amazing that you're actually going to share that, and so many other people are going to benefit from it as well. So you may not intentionally be doing God's work, but in a roundabout way, that's exactly what you are doing. You're doing God's work.
Yeah. I agree. I agree with you. It's the thought of God and all of that. It's never left my mind and heart. Really. I mean, and like a father doesn't leave a child, or shouldn't leave a child. No. And yeah. I mean, I feel so blessed. The things I've been through a lifetime of things already, and the privileges I've got now in terms of having a son and having a daughter, and having a wife who, and just having the opportunity to actually help people, and just give. I had a guy DM me on Twitter, and just said, "Is there any chance I can chat with you?" I was like, "What's it about, mate?" He went, "He just wanted some advice on some acting." And I was like, "Yeah, here's my number. I'll give you a ring." So, and he rang me up. He went, "I can't believe you let me talk to you," and I was like, "Well, why wouldn't I? You know what I mean? If you want some advice, if I've got 5 minutes, well, that's 5 minutes well spent. Giving you some advice if it's good advice to you, and so I'm always open like that, because at the end of the day, when you've seen hell, this is the problem with people, is that they don't, and it's a problem with church as well. A lot of the time, people don't want to hear about the hell they could go to. They want to get out of the hell they're in. And they want to get out of it by hearing about grace, and they want to hear about kindness and love and compassion and all of those good things that we as humans, when we display it, is the most beautiful thing in the world. I don't care. I know some hard blokes, like we all do, and whatever, and they're like me. The same. They it's a funny thing. It's the people who are the hardest blokes and the people who have gone through the most stuff who are the softest.
Yeah, no, I've experienced that a few times. Yeah,
and who have got the biggest hearts.
Yeah,
and
Johnny, I've got to say this. You've been a fantastic guest on the podcast, and the premise for coming on to Frankly Speaking is, is real people, and you've certainly been real today, and to inspire people. And I believe through our conversation today that you would have inspired people as well. So from my point of view, it ticks all the boxes. So I'll finish up now by saying that I wish you all the best for the future. And I'm sure other people that have been listening in, I hope they leave some positive comments. And as I say, I hope the film's a success. you've already uncovered a hidden talent whose one word is apparently. But I should look forward to meeting up again in different circumstances. And
Yes.
as I say, I wish you all the best, and I'm sure everybody else does. So thanks very much for your time. And
Appreciate that. And if anybody, just say, if anybody wants to get in touch, they want to support me, they want to, get into the film industry, anything like that, go to my website and just there's a contact page. You can send me an email. It'll come straight to me.
That's lovely. That's brilliant. Johnny, I wish you all the best, my friend. I wish you all the best.
Bless you, mate. Thank you.
You too. Once again, I'd just like to thank Myson's Building Company for supporting us today. And again, I'd like to thank Raw Media Services. I wish everybody that's watched Johnny today has taken some inspiration for that. Okay. Thanks very much, everybody.